Are you guys ready to have some fun? I'm going to get started. We have prepped a couple of things. We have prepped brows already off stage, and I prepped her eyelids off stage, and just a little bit of mascara, which I'll go over again later. I'm going to take a little bit of shade number 2 of the new Soft Blur Setting Powder, and I'm going to just apply some setting powder on the lids before we go in with shadows. So I'm just blending that concealer. This is the EF1 brush, which also works as a great concealer brush. Okay, now I'm going in with the shade number 2 of the Soft Blur Setting Powder. Very, very little. I don't want to add too much texture or too much weight onto the lid prior to applying the eyeshadows. All right, so I'm going to take a little bit of shade 8 and then shade 10, just 2 browns. You'll notice throughout that I mix everything. It's very rare that I just use one color. I always mix colors. So I'm going to start out on the outer corner, and this is our new brush that came out with the neutrals. It's the E6, and I'm just going to deposit some of the color onto the outer corner. Now I want to lift this and pull it outwards, but I'm not going to apply the shadow there. I'm going to pull it out into there, and that's how you're going to get the most seamless effect. So I'm taking now the F3 brush, and I'm just going to start buffing out the edges a little bit. And then I'm going to start pushing it out in the direction that I want. And that could be either straight or that could be slightly upward, right? And you'll notice I like to do makeup in an upward fashion. And then I'm going to drag out again just a little bit. You want to do small bits at a time. You don't want to deposit too much because it's really difficult to remove. Things start to get messy throughout the application if you're constantly having to remove. So just start with a little bit. You can always add more. And open your eyes. And I like to also apply with the eyes open sometimes because that's how you're going to live your life, right? With your eyes open. So it always makes more sense. Now I'm taking the smaller end of the brush, and I'm just going to add, it looks straight for me. I'm just going to kind of add right on top of that crease right there. This is going to further define. And then as I get out to that outer corner, I'm sort of connecting it to this area here that I've been pulling out. So I'm going to blend that crease in now a little bit. And then a little bit later, once I apply concealer and powder and everything, I'm then going to go in onto the bottom eye as well. So shade 8 and shade 10, and deposit the color right there. And then always, obviously, remember that wherever you are initially depositing the first color, the first bits of pigment and color with the brush, is going to be the area that is darkest or that you want it to be the darkest. So I definitely don't want it to be darkest here. I'm depositing it here, and then I'm pulling it out so that it gradually goes softer. And I'm going to now take shade 8, and a little bit of 7 as well. And I'm going to take this fluffy brush now, and I'm going to apply just a wash. You see, I like to put it on the hand first to remove the bulk of the product. I'm just going to take a wash. Now, there's a bone right here and right here, right? You can feel it with the hands. This is a very overlooked area that people don't put shadow on, but this area here is one of my favorite places to apply shadow because it makes the overall look very cohesive. It also anchors the eyes onto the face so that it doesn't look like there's just 2 kind of floating eyes on the face. And then later on, if you choose to contour your nose, you would then connect this into the nose contour. What shade would I use for someone that has a lighter skin tone? I would probably go in the same, yeah. Yeah, I always mix a couple of shades, but I would definitely go in with this. You know, if they're extremely light, I would go in probably with shade 4. All right, so this is my favorite shade of brown. This is the Perfect Brown, it's called. And I'm going to go in, not so perfect, right? Because we're going to do a smoky eye. So smoky means you can smoke it out after, so you don't have to stress about it being too perfect. Close your eye for me. I'm going to start out by going slightly into the lashes, right? But you'll notice that I don't like to go thick with the line on the lid unless someone has like really large lid space, because I don't like to lose the lid space. So the thicker that you go with a line here, the smaller the eyes will become. Open. And so I want to kind of keep as much of that lid space as possible. So now I'm going to go ahead and I have her look down, and I'm going to lift it up, and I'm going to go into those lashes and into that inner rim of the eye, and this gives a really beautiful definition, especially when it's photographed. Now I'm taking that little brush on the other end. I'm just going to very softly and gently smoke it out a bit. This is all going to connect now. This and the outer shadow, and then the shadow that I apply on the bottom of the eyes later, it will all connect, and you'll see. Now, also, if someone has smaller eyes, let's say, smaller than her, or eyes that you want to really pull apart more, you don't want to put liner in here, because really anything dark in there is going to really bring those eyes closer together. And then flipping this pencil. And if you struggle with liquid liners, I know as an artist, sometimes liquid liner really is more time-consuming, right? You need Q-tips and you need remover and you got to perfect it. A way that you can get more symmetrical liner is by using this little brush. You can line to the corner, and then just as I pulled out before the eyeshadow, you can do the same thing with this pencil by just dragging out that liner into the shape that you like, and then you can perfect it later. I like to, again, have her look straight so that I know exactly where to take this up to. I'm just going to take it up a tiny bit right in here. There's not one rule for all hooded eyes, but it depends on how hooded it is. It depends on the look that you're going for. But generally, hooded eyes, I would never apply liner with their eyes closed. I would always make sure that the eyes are completely straight so that that liner is going to go straight, because you're going to have to go over some skin with that. So it is definitely more challenging when you're lining hooded eyes. Look up for me. I'm going to go along the inner rim now, and definitely into the lashes as well a little bit. This is brown. This is called the perfect brown. I definitely prefer to use brown. I do use black at times as well, but I usually will do brown first and then go in with black after the lashes usually to see, because again, I'm restraining. I'm trying to hold back as much as possible to see how natural I can get this makeup. And so I'm going to take just a tiny bit of shade number 2 to highlight with this matte shade, and I'm going to apply it just at the very, very highest point of the brow. I'm not going to drag it all the way down, especially if it's like a shimmer. You don't want to drag it all the way down, because what you're going to do is you're going to really bring the eye down this way, because anything that's light and shiny or light with a highlight is going to, that's where the eye is going to go. So you want to keep it right here in the very highest part and not in here. Okay, I'm probably not allowed to tell you guys this, but these are 2 new shades. We're doing shade extensions of the SurrealSkin foundation, so we're coming out with lots of 0.5s, which I'm really excited about. So I'm going to try, yeah, there's lots of great neutrals and golden tones. So I'm going to mix 17.5 and 18.5, and I'm using our very popular F4 brush. All right, so I'm just taking a little bit now. I always like to put it on my hand, just to get that first layer on the hand. And then I always like to start right into this area here, so the center of the face, and then I like to bring it outwards. When you are applying a foundation, it's also important to try to have a sort of self-restraint, right? To try to restrain yourself or edit yourself, because it's almost easier to go in with a heavy foundation, right? Because it's just quicker. You can just go in and cover the whole face with a heavy foundation. It's harder to go in with a softer foundation and then use concealer and powder and you know, becoming more detailed and more perfect with it. So what I'm doing now is sort of, I'm pressing it onto the skin, but I'm also kind of pulling it outward a little bit. I'm not dragging this onto the skin. So I'm just pressing it in. But as I get now to the outer corners of the face, so the hairline, the perimeter of the face, you don't want to use barely any product in that area. Does anyone know why? There's several reasons. One is that everyone's forehead, mostly everyone's forehead, and even this area here is always going to be a little bit darker than the center of the face, right? Because the sun hits you here, so you're never going to be just one tone. This area is always going to be darker. So if I'm taking her main shade, which is this color, and I'm putting it up here, it's not going to be a good look. It's going to be a little bit too light and too pale. Also, the other reason is the hair is there, so you want to keep the hair neat. You don't want to get the hair with product in it. And the other reason is that you will be putting, if you choose to sculpt or softly sculpt, you'll put bronzer there, you'll put contour there. And so you don't want to layer too many unnecessary things. And then I always take the leftover as well and just kind of hit a little bit on the neck. I'm just taking a clean sponge, damp, and I'm just tapping a little bit just to really press everything in. But the other reason is to remove that very, very top layer. And then as I'm buffing it in, I'm softening it. This is going to be like one more pressing to remove the top layer. Again, mixing 2 colors, I'm going to go in with 340. So this is the EF1 brush. And I'm just going to rub this in here. And I'm going to start to apply just right here a little bit. Now, you notice I'm not going all the way up to the lashes, because I'm going to be smoking that area out. When you go up, sometimes I do go up all the way with the concealer, but that's if I want to make someone's eyes very almondy and more, sort of more pulled out. And we're just putting like almost a veil of color over this. It's very, very light, the amount that I'm putting on. So letting that dry just a little bit, and just putting the tiniest bit right there, tiniest bit right there, tiniest bit right there. Now I'm going to take our concealer brush. This is the F5. And I'm going to start just pressing and melting it into the skin. And now I have a little space right there to where I can comfortably blend without worrying that it's getting so close to the eye. And then someone asked just before, like, what about for an event, right? You mean, you're talking about like just a full beat, right? For that, I would still do this technique, but I would do the first layer, blend it, and then you take a step back and see, does she need more? Can she handle more? And then that's when you go in with a little bit more. When I'm working on set, the way that I prep the skin is I'll take a wipe first and just kind of really wipe the face. I feel like it gives a little exfoliation and cleanses the skin. And then I just go in with a moisturizer. I'm not big on primers. I have never really been big on primers. I have used them before. For me, I like a moisturized base because I like to use powders. I'm going to take now the foundation brush. And this has already a little bit of foundation on it, and I use this throughout the whole application to buff all the edges out of everything that I'm doing. So I just did concealer, and now I'm going to buff the edges out, marry it into the foundation. I like to use both brush and puff, okay? I'm going to go in first on the complexion using shade 4. Now with the brush, obviously it's going to go on super, super light. Before I go on with the puff, I am just going to go into these little areas that maybe I don't want to put the puff into too much because the puff is always going to go on heavier. All right, so we're going to take now a little bit. And again, remember I like to start always here. This is the area also that gets the most oily. And so I like to put that first amount right there. And also, if you notice, I'm not going on like incredibly heavy with this. I'm just going first a little bit light, right? Because we're going to test it out a little bit and see. Do I recommend using powder for dry skin? If necessary, you know. I mean, if it's so extremely dry that you don't need it, then I would say no. But powder generally, makeup without powder it's hard because it's not going to last, guys. Powder really helps the makeup to last beautifully. What I recommend for mature skin, in terms of what? We just talked about creases, remember? There's nothing you can do about creases. They are not going to be removed by makeup. The only thing that can remove creases is surgery or tapes or things like that. So if you see that the makeup is getting into creases and making someone look older, you have to use less, you know? You have to play around with the formulas. One thing is not going to work on every single person, so they always have to be adjusted according to the face or the issues that you're working with. And so maybe some skin or some faces are going to require you to use a foundation, maybe that is a little bit less lightweight, right? So it has a little bit more coverage, but then you use less powder, and then maybe that formula works, right, for that client or for that particular person's skin. This is the F3 brush, so this is the shade number 2. It's a little bit lighter. And I'm going to go first with just a little wash with the brush first. So now that I've went in with the softer application with the brush, just to kind of season it a bit, I'm going to go in now with the puff. And I want to start sculpting a little bit. This is the enhancer, Soft Sculpt Transforming Skin Enhancer. This is the shade Medium Dark, and this is the shade Dark. And of course, I'm going to always apply this on the hand. I'll never go directly to the skin without first putting on a tissue or without first putting it on my hand. So I'm coating the brush very evenly, making sure it's nice and sheer and even. And then I'm going to go, I like to always do it first right there because that's the area that I want it to be darkest. And I'm using the smaller end, right? And then I flip and I take it and I buff by pressing in. Make sure that your brush hairs are evenly coated, and that's another reason why I'm doing this, is that I'm making sure that every hair on this brush is evenly coated, because if there's a few hairs that are not, that's going to show on here, and so you're going to have a little missing spot there. A little bit right here. I'm not putting it so much under, but rather kind of hitting that bone right here, the jaw and the chin, so that some of it's coming up. I think it's very common now to where if this was a few years ago, people would have been like, how are you putting cream over powder? I've always put cream over powder. And the reason why, that's how I actually designed this product. When I'm sculpting, I like grip because I don't like to put a product on and have it sliding all over. And because I like to use loose powder, I wanted a product that was sheer and that was emollient enough to where when I apply it over powder, it will grip the powder and make the powder look more natural. You know, That being said, you don't have to do it this way. You can also use just a regular powder contour or bronzer. This technique here actually enables me to use less powder bronzer later because it sort of will go on now and it's going to create a beautiful tone. And then I'm going to go in now with the cheeks. Typically, the darkest is going to be here, again, towards the hairline. So I like to first apply that little bit there and then just kind of press. You notice I'm not dragging this product. I'm just pressing so that it applies softly and evenly. My favorite launch this year, probably the powders. I mean, I've been waiting because it's so hard for me to work without powders that I was dying to come out with powder, but it wasn't ready yet. And so when the powders launched this year, I was like a big, really like a, release off of me because I've been waiting patiently. The self-setting concealer. Yeah, there are definitely times that you can use it with no powder, but if you're doing like a full glam makeup, you want to definitely use powder. You don't want to just use the concealer. And then the more that you use as well, the more powder you're going to need. So if you're using very little bit of that concealer, you're going to need less powder. If you're using more of that concealer, you're probably going to need more powder. So medium dark and dark. And this is the powder brush F2. This is a matte bronzer, so there's no shimmer in this. I'm going to put just a tiny bit, making sure that all of the hairs are lightly coated. And this is going to now set as well, that enhancer that we applied earlier. And it's going to further sculpt and bronze. I used under the eyes shade number 2 first, and then I mixed shades number 2 and 4, and I put that all over. My main inspiration when I was very young and started in makeup was Kevin Aucoin was my number one always. Because Kevin at that time, the transformations and the books, and I used to take the subway to work when I was working at Sephora, and I would spend all my time reading magazines or reading Kevin's books, and I used to learn so much while I was in the subway reading those books. And it was more than makeup too, though. It was his story, and he was an example to me that I can also. There's someone else that achieved this huge level of success that I really wanted to achieve for my family. And he was someone that I looked up to because he was doing that at that time, and he was really the only one that was at that sort of level. And so I really, really looked up to that, and it was a huge inspiration to me. You know I'm going to use both already. Come on. Is that even a question? All right, so I'm taking the smaller side of the F4. All right, so I'm just, again, this is very, very, very similar formula to the skin enhancer. Same idea. You put it on over the powder, and it makes the powder and the cheeks look so healthy. And I'll give you these shade names. The brighter one is from the Brights collection that we recently launched, and then this is from the OG collection. This is just Peachy, and this one is Papaya Pop. Well, I like, for almost everyone, peach and pink are always my favorites, and I used to always mix for many years peach and pink. I'm just taking a little bit of the loose powder now and buffing the edges. It's been in the works for a long time. But I am very picky with mascara because I like mascaras that apply super clean and that are very easy to build and that are very easy to separate. And I always wipe the wand a little bit to get that excess off. Remember I said I like it very clean because I prefer to build than to apply so much at the beginning. I want to marry now these two, the top and bottom, just a little bit. So I'm going to go in with the small side of the new brush, the new eyeshadow brush, double-sided. So I'm going to just go in, touching those lashes, rubbing it into that liner that we applied earlier. No, I never use eyelash primer, just mascara, curl mascara, and then lashes. And then I'm going into shade 10. So connect in here, and then go in here. All right, I'm going to start lips a little bit. So I'm going to start out with Travis. It's a little bit deeper. And I'm going to be giving the lip lift, but more so on the top lip, not the bottom so much, because the bottom here, I'm just going to focus on proportion more here. So typically I would overline the top center lip, going down into the natural lip line as we go into the outer corners. And I would do the same on the bottom. But because I want to just slightly enhance the upper lip and not so much the bottom, I'm going to sort of do like a half lip lift. I'm just going to go just slightly above, and just so you know, the lip lift, what that does, and what this does here, that smokiness under the eye that we applied, is it sort of gives the look of sort of shortening the face, because as we age, everything lengthens, right? And so the lip lift is going to shorten the distance between the nose and here. It gives the look of youthfulness. And then this little smokiness on the bottom here that we take right to that very first line, that conceals that first line, but it also shortens or gives the appearance that it's shortening from here to here, which also gives the look of a more youthful look. And then we're going to take now and line, not so much under, or overlining I meant, but we're going to go into her natural lip line here. Oh, I don't have just one. I've been into, it's like I go through, like for 1 month I love this, and for 1 month I love something else. Right now, I've been using a lot of rich mauve lip liner. I've been using a lot of Kate and Erin lipstick from the Ultra Suede collection, or Flatiron from the Super Satin collection. Bronx Baby from the Super Satin collection, and then to be honest, any of the Moisture Glow, because they're also sheer. And so I'm going in now with Spice Chai and using this little handy brush on the other end and just blending into the center. Okay, I'm gonna just take a little bit of the powder blush. This is Creamy Peach, and I'm just gonna pop a little bit the cheek. Smile. Okay, this is the shade Honey Glow, and it has a nice caramel honey vibe to it, which kind of will look really nice with this look. I would definitely normally take a lighter one for the center. I'm going to go in now, one final bit of the loose powder, and we're going to set it. I'm taking a little bit of powder. Okay, now let me spray. This is the soft setting spray. And number one piece of life of advice that I can give. Oh my God, I could do a whole masterclass on that. I would say at the end of the day, probably the most important thing is something my mom used to tell me when I was younger, is that you just have to be a good person, and that no matter what's going on in your life, and this goes for makeup artists as well who are working with clients, your decisions that you make today are going to affect things down the line, like many years down the line. And my life and my lived experience is definitely proof of that. And so you want to just always be a good person and make decisions based off, having a good heart and doing the right thing. And karma will then do its job and bring all of that back to you. So I would say if I had to choose just one thing, I would probably say that, because it supersedes everything else, is just be a good person and be grateful. Live life with gratitude, even if you're having a terrible day, because that terrible day will teach you something. So that's what I would say. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.